All right, everyone, welcome to another edition of What's What BR. We have returning guests, Garret Graves, Congressman Garret Graves. I got to make sure I do my political official endorsements. How are you, sir?
Hey, doing great. How about you?
I am awesome. It is the Friday before.
Yeah.
I feel like everything's slowing, like we're about to hit slow motion, but it's been for me, I know for you as well, it's been just this race to get to this moment, to date ourselves. We're like the 17th, right? It's 3 o'clock. There's people think there's 2 hours left in the world to get stuff done this year.
Yeah, no,
That's what it feels like.
It's almost time to start doing our Christmas shopping, I think.
Exactly. I talked to somebody the other day. They were like, I have all my stuff done. Look at my tree. They showed me a picture and I'm like, you're not working hard enough. And they go, what do you mean? I got it all done. I said, no, if you've got all your Christmas shopping done, you're not working hard enough in my book. So
Yeah, no, our daughters, they were pretty clear because I said, look, I got to leave town tomorrow. They were like, Dad, if you don't get us a Christmas tree, this was a few weeks ago, if you don't get us a Christmas tree today, you're getting nothing but coal for Christmas. I mean, they were just, they were really adamant because I planned on doing it the weekend before and ran out of time. And so yeah, it is amazing those people that the day after Thanksgiving, Christmas trees up, decorations are out. I'm always a little envious of those folks.
my 13-year-old daughter is turned into that person. My wife loves the Christmas. They're ready to do it. They were literally like Thanksgiving night. They would have done it the week before, but I was like, no, I'll get everything down. I'll bring the trees. I have 4 trees in my house. I'm not lying. 4 Christmas trees.
Wow.
And I was like, I'm not bringing them down, right now. I'm like, I'm not doing it. I got to go run some errands. I left. The 13-year-old went in the attic and drug it all down herself and was putting it up. And I was like, okay, I can't have another one of your mother. It's like you're just a little mini me running around. And they sat there for 2 days straight. And it looked like I was moving. So I had tubs everywhere in the house. But it was done. And I enjoy it now. I appreciate it. But It was, oh my God, I had work to do.
Yeah. Well, you know what, though? It is awesome because, as you well know, you get sucked up in work and you're just running around, and you kind of forget about the season that we're in right now. And so you come home and you got the decorations up, Christmas tree lights are on. I mean, it reminds you of the season. It reminds you of kind of the background and the importance. And I think it's awesome. And I loved that our daughters were pushing so hard on it. I think it is very important to not let this pass.
Absolutely. I told somebody the other day on the show, I joke about it and kind of harass like we just did, but I enjoy more than anything. I stay up late. I'm a night person and I love everybody in my house is asleep and I've got the Christmas, tree lights on and I'm just sitting there on the couch, and I've got an iPad just kind of doing some more, but it's just peaceful at that point. I don't know how to describe it. Just dark house, nothing but Christmas tree lights on. And I feel like, and I kind of breathe and I kind of just think to myself, I'm like, did we really just go through all this? Are we still okay, we'll do it again. So anyway, diving in. I know you've got a million things to do. Tell me, you've had some things going on. I've been seeing your name buzz associated, doing a lot of recovery work, around the IDA stuff. That's for some reason that still seems to be an uphill battle. Like this is new to people.
Yeah. Well, first, Brandon, I mean, Hurricane Ida was really incredible. And I had the chance to fly over a lot of the areas right after the hurricane and, of course, been on the ground a good bit and just seeing the power of that storm. And look, we've all been through hurricanes before and they're all a little different, but my goodness, just some of these areas, lower Terrebonne Parish and lower Lafourche Parish, and then, going on up through St. Charles and St. John and all around Lake Maurepas, Lake Pontchartrain in these communities and, Livingston Parish, Tangipahoa and East Baton Rouge and Ascension, I mean, just pounded the wind. And you can see the areas that storm surge, the areas that got a lot of rainfall and the areas that just got pounded by the wind. And I even remember driving down I-12, you're driving and, as you go, you see where the trees were laying north versus south, and it's where the storm, the eye of the storm must have come right through because that's where the wind direction would have changed. I mean, just amazing to see how powerful it was, how widespread the damages were. But even only the second time I've ever seen where a hurricane was so powerful that it blew down brick homes, brick buildings. That is just amazing. And then, we were able to make a lot of progress and able to secure about $1 billion in extra recovery funds. This is on top of all the FEMA dollars. And that's $1 billion goes directly to people whose homes were destroyed, helping them recover. We're able to secure about $2 billion in new flood protection and dredging type investments, helping to make our communities safer. So when we rebuild, we truly are stronger. And even though it's a lot of money, it's not enough. And so we're continuing to work now and with the tornadoes in the Midwest and Kentucky and Illinois and some of these other areas, we now have a larger coalition of people working with folks from California from the wildfires. And again, the 2020 and 2021 hurricanes here, and now the tornadoes, working together with those states on recovery legislation, not just the money, but also how do we make this process work better to where disaster victims aren't victimized again just by the red tape and bureaucracy of our own government.
That's what I was kind of like about to lead and ask. It would almost seem like, and full disclosure, I don't follow as close on all the politics and watching sessions and bills, but it's like these disasters, not just the hurricanes, the wildfires, the tornadoes, everything. And it seems like every time something happens, guys like you've got to go and fight, to get the money. It's like, why don't we pre-plan for this? Like allocate it, set it to the side and go. And even if it is like, I don't know, it seems simple to me, like from a business owner, it's almost like, hey, I'm going to go allocate some money. I'm going to put it over here to the side and say, if this happens and this box gets checked and this box, then boom, money just flows out the door. And it's just kind of like, yes, we got hit by a hurricane. It did impact this many people. This is where it was. And then money goes. And then we can immediately help rather than having to go fight for it. It seems like if it's a wildfire or wherever it is, maybe it's like that. I don't know. But it seems like it's always having to fight.
You got to be careful about that, Brandon. You're trying to apply common sense to government, and the two are just entirely incompatible. I mean, look, you're exactly right. And seriously, look, disasters are devastating. I mean, people whose homes were just completely wiped out, all of their belongings. What are they going to do with their family? Where are they going to live? I mean, look, these are tragic times in the aftermath of these disasters. And this isn't the first time. It's, Katrina, Rita, Gustav, Ike, Isaac. I mean, these things are going to happen again. And this should not be rocket science. This should not be reinventing the wheel each time. But just to put things in perspective, we got about $600 million for hurricanes Laura, Delta, Zeta. We got about $1 billion for Hurricane Ida for this recovery program that I mentioned. And so we're talking to the agency, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development that administers this program. We're like, all right, tell us your timeline. Like, well, for the Laura, Delta, Zeta funds, we think we're going to publish the rules on how the funds can be used in January. And you're just like, okay, wait. The storm was in August. We appropriated the funds 1 month later. 1 month later, got $600 million for Laura, Delta, Zeta, got the $1 billion for Ida, and you're talking about writing rules for the 2020 disasters in 2022, and you were unable to give us a timeline for when you're going to write the rules for the 2021 disaster. Like, first of all, why is there a new set of rules? Why does it take months to do the same thing you've done dozens of times over and over again? This should be a copy and paste, and it should have happened on October 1st. And so, I mean, it's infuriating. And it's just, so then you have people that I'm going to meet with, and they're like, yeah, I'm living, people down in Lower Terrebonne Parish, for example, the elevated homes. We went down, they had people that had just wrapped tarps around the telephone, the poles that were elevating their home, the telephone poles elevating their homes, the pylons. They had wrapped tarps around, and they were just living in there, inside that, and so I'm sitting here saying, yeah, well, there's $1 billion, but I mean, I feel stupid even saying it, because they're like, wait a minute, there's $1 billion and I'm living in a tarp. and you're just like, it's just infuriating. You go back to Washington, you're talking to these people. It's like, we don't have time for this. The people are living, in a tarp, and these bureaucrats. It's unbelievable, the disconnect. And so I've wanted to write amendments and just say, you have to live in a tarp until they're in a house, or in somewhere that's rational.
No, it's like you said. In my mind, it's like like in Word, right? Copy and paste, find and replace. Like find, this pair. Like, why are we rewriting rules? And what gets me on this, and I always say I'm never trying to be, and not investigative or point anything out, but just I've got to say it as you're talking about. It's like, but a lot of these people that have got the bureaucrat, the whole thing, they'll put their buddy with the contract to go in, and help. It's like, we'll take care of him first and make sure that we've got, like, I know some people that have these standby contracts that they're frankly just paid for if and when it happens. So it's like, we'll do that work on the front end. Why aren't we doing this other work on the front end and saying, hey, we're going to, if nothing else, say, like, I guess it's back to the business thing. Like, there's a rule in most companies. It's like, if you need to write a check, you can write a check for up to this amount, no matter what. After that, then you need to come and ask for permission. Like, why can we do that? Like, okay, you can immediately just take, $100 million, or 60 million, and just immediately, like, here it is in the account, go while we're working on the other stuff and get people moving.
Yeah.
That would seem obvious.
Well, and like I said, common sense and government oftentimes seem entirely incompatible, but that's largely what we did. We got together with Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett, who represents the Virgin Islands, and look, Hurricanes Irma and Maria just pounded that area. And so she called me and said, Garret, this is infuriating. I'm like, yeah, it really is, because she knew that we had done a good bit of work in that disaster space. And so we actually got together and introduced a bill, bipartisan bill, that largely did exactly what you said. It first of all, right after the disaster, did a preliminary damage assessment and cut a check to the states or to the parishes of a certain percentage of overall damages, but it was automatic. You didn't have to go through all these actions in Congress and everything else. I mean, we were able to get money for Hurricane Ida 1 month after the storm, but for Hurricane Laura, it was 14 months later. Who's got 14 months to wait? So our bill would have been an automatic deployment of the dollars, but also, instead of going through and publishing the rules and then filing an application, and literally, and I'm not making this up, they'll often have 3 or 4 times where the same exact thing is checked to make sure it's in compliance, which, yes, you're exactly right. Going back to my buddy getting the contract kind of thing, there's some bureaucrat's buddy who's getting paid for each one of those times they do the same thing. It's yep, looks good. Yep, still looks good, and they're getting paid each time. And so what our bill would do is it would, and this passed out of the House Transportation Committee, it would set up an automatic fund that's there every year. Right after the disaster, a portion of the funds are given to the states or to the parishes or counties. They have a good bit of flexibility or autonomy to give those dollars out without all of these, checks. We have to go through and review the same thing over and over again. And look, just to put in perspective of how bad this is, there needs to be accountability if there's a better balance. 2016 flood, we got $1.7 billion for this recovery program. It's supposed to be for individuals. Here we are, 2016 flood. We got the dollars starting 1 month after the flood. We got another chunk 4 months later and another chunk about 8 months later, 1.7 billion. Here we are in 2021, almost 2022. So over 5 years later, of 1.7 billion. Take a guess at how much of that has actually been awarded directly to the homeowners, the people whose homes were destroyed. Take a guess.
I don't even. I was one of those. So now this is getting personal. I can't even imagine.
It's right around $650 million out of 1.7 billion. Now look, getting 1.7 billion from the other 49 states that didn't experience the disaster, That's not easy to do. I mean, that is us out there pounding the pavement, doing meetings with all these people, trying to show them the pictures, flying them down here and taking them around, trying to get some sympathy from these folks. That is really hard to do. Like I said, for the 2020 hurricanes, Laura, Delta, Zeta, it took 14 months to get the first dollar. We did all this work. We get the money and we're thinking, okay, good. Now we're in the end zone. Everything's great. Here we are 5 years later, over 5 years later. And basically somewhere around a third of the money has been given to these homeowners. I mean, it's baffling. And I'll use the word a third time, infuriating to watch these things happen. And that's why we've been trying to do what you said is a little bit more common sense, getting the dollars out faster, providing a little bit more flexibility, and that you can't predict exactly what the needs are going to be and what the impacts are going to be from every single disaster. So you can't have these really tight set of rules. You got to be a little bit more flexible on how this stuff works and be more rapid or agile on getting the dollars out.
Oh my God. It reminds me, there's the, those motivational posters that people have, it's like the bear with the fish, and they tell you, there's the salmon swimming upstream. There's a website, I believe it's like despair.com, and they do the reverse. And like they've got one where it's got the Capitol building, and underneath it says government, in big letters, and it's like, and then below it says, if you think the problems we create are bad, just wait until you see our solutions.
That's good. We, the Corps of Engineers is the agency that does a lot of the flood protection and hurricane protection projects. So like the COMEET project, we've done a lot of work on. We were so infuriated with them and just, working with them. So we used to have a saying inside the office, they may be slow, but at least they're expensive. And and look, we can sit here and laugh about it. Maybe it's something that goes on that website that you talked about. But look, this is not okay. And so many people have gotten to the point to where they're like, well, look, it's just government. And but no, it's our government. And we're victimized by our own government. And this is not okay. And so it's another area where we've been working to try to really transform or revolutionize how these agencies work. And I'll tell you something, we actually did. And after the 2016 flood, I will never forget this 2016 flood. All these people, as homes completely underwater, destroyed. And so they're calling us for help. Well, under this Privacy Act of 1974, in order for us to help, they have to get a piece of paper that we have on our website. They have to print it out, fill it out, and sign it, and then mail it to us. So I'm, talking to these people. I'm like, hey, yeah, look, all you need to do is go to our website, click on this link, print out this form. And these people are like, yeah, did I not mention that my house, including my computer and printer, are under 8 feet of water? And, so you're just like, ooh. And also this was written in the early 1970s, and we've all got these now. And so, we wrote a bill. I got together with Congressman Joe Kennedy out of Massachusetts, bipartisan bill. We had some senators from Ohio and another state, bipartisan over there. So we had bipartisan bicameral bill that basically changed the law and allowed us to do this. And so you can now go online and do it all right here and not print out a form and mail it and wait for it to get to us, but it's just boom, we can immediately get working on it. But it's just one of those little things, but like you said earlier, Brendan, it's common sense. I mean, could you imagine if Amazon, if you had to fill out an order form and mail it in, how long that place would be in business? I mean, it's not rational. It's not keeping up with technology. It's not providing the level of service to people that they deserve. But because there's no competition within government, it just keeps happening. But Amazon would get shut down and somebody else would step in and take over because they'd be providing a better service. But because there's not competition within government, they're the only entity doing it. They're not penalized for the bureaucracy, and we're trying to change that by providing sort of more competition. If the federal government can't do it, let's give the money to the state. Let's give the money to the parish or the local government. And in some cases, that model really has worked and inspired these bureaucrats to start being more innovative and realizing if they don't, they're going to lose their job.
It reminds me of the old saying, about consulting. If you're not part of the solution, there's good money to be made in prolonging the problem.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there was a lobbyist in Washington that maybe 20 years or so. He actually went to jail, and he was creating the problems that his clients hired him, or that future clients hired him to fix. So he was basically on both sides of it. He was creating the problem and then getting people to hire him to fix it. I mean, but he went to jail.
There was a guy. I won't say that. I don't think it was local actually, but I remember it was a sign and lighting company that ended up getting in trouble. They were running around at night shooting signs and lights out with a BB gun, and they would take a picture and mail it to the business owner saying, "We'd be happy to come change your light."
Wow. That's like the tire shop that throws the nails out in the street, right?
Yeah.
Gosh.
Oh my gosh. So tell me, so that's to jump us there, because we could keep going, all day there. Jumping in, you've been real instrumental on some of this infrastructure, and I've even heard, this is a big bill. This is coming down. This is going to make some major changes where we're actually going to be able to, hopefully, I don't think we could ever say clear the backlog, right? But we could start working on the backlog if we can find the people. That's a whole nother topic.
Yeah. So look, I think that there are 5 major issues that are really holding Louisiana back. Just to quickly reset things, you look at Louisiana back in like the early 1900s and the mid 1900s. I mean, Brandon, we were blowing away Texas and Alabama and Georgia. I mean, we were really just the heart of the South. And it was all based on the natural resources we had here. It was based upon the ports and the Mississippi River. The waterways we had access to were really controlled. We were the gateway. All these things that were huge assets or strengths in the early and mid 1900s. That's why Louisiana was this powerhouse. But then now look, I mean, you got, Houston and Houston and Dallas and Austin. You got Atlanta, you got Birmingham, and all these other cities that have just completely blown us away. But those strengths that made us powerful in this economic center, then they're still here. They're still here. And I think that, those 5 things that we need to fix, infrastructure is right there at the top. I mean, we're not going to have this big, thriving, successful community if you can't even get from A to B because you're stuck in traffic. And we all know right here in, Baton Rouge Capital Region, we have 4th worst traffic in America for a mid-sized city. The Mississippi River Bridge is one of the worst bottlenecks in America, worse than all these other larger cities.
I've read that we're the 66th largest city in the country, and our traffic is the 5th worst in the country.
Yeah,
I think is
So just think about the population of cities like Denver and Houston and Chicago and Dallas. I mean, all these cities that are much larger than we are. Our traffic is worse than all those I named. Denver, Chicago, Dallas, Houston, our traffic is worse. And you're exactly right. It doesn't make sense. And so we've got to fix that. But the other thing is, as we're trying to lure economic development, or we're trying to get people to move here, but then there's a risk of flooding. Well, wait a minute. Am I going to put my family? Am I going to invest all of my resources in a business in a place that potentially is going to go underwater? No, that's not okay. And if we're not, we can have awesome schools and churches and job creations, centers and manufacturing and all this stuff. But if it's underwater, doesn't matter. Even our roads are useless if they're underwater. And so that's another area of infrastructure. The good news is, even without the infrastructure bill, let me say that again, without the infrastructure bill, we've been able to secure about $8 billion in infrastructure investments. And I mean, that's huge flood protection projects providing better resiliency from hurricanes, restoring our coast, and obviously some major transportation investments. So we're really excited about that. The infrastructure bill has the potential to bring some additional dollars to the state, though. I heard the governor this week, he was talking about it. And he kind of gave some sobering numbers. He said that the state of Louisiana gets about $500 million a year right now in transportation funds. He said under the bill, the state will get about $600 million a year, but I think he said our cost share will go up by about $50 million a year. So you can do the math, and that nets only about, if I understood him correctly, about $50 million a year in extra money. So I think that, look, the strategy for us to ultimately fix some of these infrastructure problems is going to be using kind of some of these pathways that we've used so far, using some of these smaller bills that are more targeted on recovery to try to get our real infrastructure investments. And that's how we got the funds to, for the Washington Street exit, that new terrace exit, and get the funds to build a new lane on I-10 from Highland Road down to Prairieville, to get the new funds for the PQ exit on I-10, and the new bridge, all these things that need to happen. I think we're really going to have to keep working kind of in parallel some of these individual bills where we've had huge success in pulling together about $8 billion in new investments. I mean, these are record levels of funding to address our problems. So we're going to keep working in parallel, working all these sources, and try and continue knocking out these infrastructure problems that are holding us back. But then, look, I want to name the other four just because I mentioned it, but I think education is another huge one we got to work on. Crime is a really big one that we have to address. Having the violent crime levels here is not okay. I think some of our tort reform reliability laws mean, look, we can't continue having the highest auto insurance rates in America, or in some years recently the second highest. That's not okay. And the last one is just fixing our tax code in Louisiana. You watch what's happening with Texas and Florida in particular. They're having this mass migration to their states, and we're losing out on economic development. Louisiana's got to take a look at our tax code and really take some of the better pieces of tax codes from some of those other states and really just modernize it to make our state more competitive. So fundamentals are strong here, but I think we've got 5 key areas where we've got to work and address some of the areas that have been neglected for way too long.
Yeah, you mentioned the tax. I've got a friend of mine that used to work for a firm outside of Louisiana, but they did tax work across the country. And he, I believe he kind of ran the Louisiana division. And when they'd go back to the corporate office, they literally would call Louisiana the foreign tax, division, because it was such a mess with all this, like this home rule state, that we have, that everybody's remitting, wherever it's such a mess, and it makes it complicated as a business owner. It's like, wait, so I drove through that parish. I need to go file taxes into that parish, and I got to mail it here. And I got 64 forms now that I got to file because I drive all around. We make it harder, for people. And I don't understand. I just don't. I'm just the common business guy trying to do something. But one thing you had mentioned, talking about the insurance, and I wanted to bring it up because nobody really talks about it, but you and I talked briefly, and just to show kind of where you're getting literally down into the weeds on some of this stuff, was the collision staging, that ties back to that, thing. And I bring it up, because I want people to know that, that's what you're all the way down in the weeds, on this. And so fill me in. This collision, yeah. I think this is just amazing.
I mean, it's one of these things that you just like, this can't be real, but this happened. So there was a ring of people in the New Orleans area. And I mean, this was attorneys. It was, people driving cars and trucks and all, but it was a ring where they staged 120 traffic accidents. And I don't even know if I can use the word accidents in this case, but what they would do is they would, for example, drive in front of an 18-wheeler and then just slam the brakes on and cause the 18-wheeler to just, right into the back of them. And then they turn around and sue the trucking company. And so they staged before they got caught. I mean, just listen to this number, because you're just like, how in the world is that even possible? They staged 120 collisions, staged them, faked them, or created them, or forced them to happen. They were real. I mean, these were real truck drivers and other people that were victims of this ring. But there were 120 staged accidents or forced accidents that they caused. Just one settlement from one of their 120 wrecks netted them $4.7 million. I mean, you can do the math across 120 different of these, you know, accidents, wrecks, whatever. And where's that money coming from? Where is that tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars coming from? It's coming from you and I. We're all paying higher auto insurance rates because these criminals went out there and did this. And look, they all made a mint off of it. But how in the world do you do 120 of these before you get caught? And that's what really struck me. I'm just, this is crazy. So we started looking into it. There's not a federal law. And now, what they ended up catching them on was mail and wire fraud and all this stuff. But, that's not okay. So we actually introduced a bipartisan bill, got together with Congressman Henry Cuellar of Texas, and we introduced a bill that makes it actually a federal crime. And so that way you can bring in the resources of the federal law enforcement agencies as well to identify some of these criminal rings and to hold these people accountable and to nail them. I mean, look, this is potentially months in jail, and depending on the severity, potentially millions of dollars in fines. But we're going to hold these people accountable. We're going to put a big disincentive in place because it's costing you and me. And look, who does this impact the most? It impacts the people that can least afford it the most, because it ends up that having the highest auto insurance rates in America, it causes a bigger financial impact, and it's a bigger financial burden on those among us that are least affordable, that are trying to maybe get out of poverty or trying to work that job during college or what have you, and they've got to drive to get there. And it's inexcusable. We have to hold these people accountable.
Yeah, that's incredible. I don't know what's more incredible. I guess the fact of them doing it, the money that they were getting out of it, or the fact that there wasn't technically anything, it sounds like, illegal about it. There wasn't anything wrong at the time, so they had to go catch them on a technicality. Almost the Al Capone and tax evasion.
Mail and wire fraud. Mail and wire fraud.
Oh my gosh. So I guess that means maybe they get away with it and they get to hang on to the money. Or who knows? I don't know enough about the legal.
No, I think they're trying to go after all of it. Maybe, can you imagine 120? I mean, I'm not sure how many people actually got hurt, because you obviously had real victims from these things. I mean, these people that are, that you have somebody right in front of you, and all of a sudden they slow down or then slam the brakes on. I mean, people are getting hurt, and not to mention the emotional toll, financial toll, and then all of Louisiana is getting hurt by the additional cost of our insurance going up, and of course that just dissuades people from coming and locating businesses here, because they're like, look, I don't want to have to pay such high insurance rates. It makes doing business in Louisiana unaffordable.
That's amazing.
So,
last bit on maybe some good news. Wanted to talk, because you might know some. Everybody here in this community's heard Bridge Forever, right? You mentioned it in passing real quick a second ago, so I'm running back to it. I've heard recently, I've kind of met with Adam and some of his team over at the chamber, and they've done some things, and there's always talk, right? Everybody's talking about the bridge, but it looks like it's a little closer. Like I heard, there was, we had so many sites that were pre-selected, and the group that was doing something. And then now, like, hopefully maybe by March, they're going to come down to like a very few and kind of bring it out to the public to actually start having real conversations.
Yeah. So they've narrowed it down to 20. It was 17, and I think now it's 20. Look, kind of a mixed bag here. One, it's not acceptable to me to start a study, I think 3 years ago, and to narrow it down to 20 after that period of time. I see a map over your left shoulder. I'm betting you, if I give you a pen, you can say, you know what, it needs to be right about here. And the urgency of a new bridge is so great that I think the process of coming up with a solution, it's got to have that same urgency. I think the process of designing and building that bridge, it's got to have that same urgency, because this should have been started 40 years ago. I mean, literally 40 years ago, this should have started. So is it is it positive that things are moving? Absolutely. But I'm not going to tell you that I'm happy about this process. The process has to reflect the urgency of the project. I had Sheriff Mike Kaz over in West Baton Rouge call me a while back, and Sheriff Kaz was just heartbroken. And look, he's not a. I'm going to say this, and he's not going to be mad at me for saying it, but he's not a very warm and fuzzy guy. He is a hard charging sheriff, and he was, you could tell he was heartbroken, and basically told me that, Garrett, look, he said, we just had a family that just got slammed into by a big truck because of the backlog, traffic up on the bridge, we had people die, and they just like, I am sick and tired of this. We've got to fix this. And he's right. And everybody's right who's as frustrated as you and I are about this. We can do better as government. We can. We have an amazing group of innovative people in this state. And, I'll say it again. It's positive that it's moving, but this is something that doesn't have the time to move through the regular process. I had offered an amendment to an infrastructure bill a few months ago that just said, look, you have 1 year to make a final determination to get this alignment done, because I can't even go out as a member of Congress, go out and try and secure funds for a bridge until there's a project. And there's not a project until they get down to one. And so I'm a little frustrated by how long this is taking. I think this is like the 8th analysis that they've done. Why couldn't you take the other 7 and go ahead and build on those instead of starting all over again? So we're going to keep pushing them to get down to that 1. I think March, I think they're supposed to narrow to 3, and then they have to go through this big national environmental policy analysis that, as I understand, is still going to take like another year and a half or so. And so I don't see a path that reflects the urgency of the need for a bridge. I guess in summary,
you talk about all the analysis.
This isn't our positive note, right?
Yeah, no, I thought it might have been better.
I'll give you one.
It's somebody told me I was watching, and they were talking about stock, analyzing stocks, and the guy told me, or the two were talking. It was like, what are you doing? Well, I'm analyzing the stock. He goes, let me explain to you, son. It's really simple. When it goes up and to the right, it's doing good. We don't need to keep looking at it. If it keeps going to the up and right, we're done. Like, why are you going to overanalyze this? This is up and to the right is good. Down to the right is bad. That's all you got to know. So
there you go. So look, I agree with you. I definitely want to end on a positive note. And so, I mentioned earlier, you have this COMET project, which is going to help provide flood protection for Baton Rouge, for Livingston and Ascension. Things been stuck since the early 1980s. We've got nearly $400 million projects under construction, and every penny they need to finish it's in the bank. So excited about that. PQ exit, you can see the road construction happening there with the overpass that they're building. That one's plowing forward. We got the new lane on I-10 that's now opened up between Highland Road and Prairieville. And so, providing more capacity there. That's good news. President Biden just signed a bill into law that we had written that's going to provide about $80 to $100 million a year in coastal restoration funds to Louisiana. So look, we got stuff that's happening that's positive. There's no shortage of problems to fix, as you have noted, but we are bringing some solutions to the table. We've been able to break some log jams that have literally been there for decades, and we're just going to keep going through, knocking those out one by one, and continue making progress and trying to force common sense on an irrational government, because our country's worth it, and still the greatest place in the world to live. Yeah,
and exactly. That's kind of where I was going to put it. With all, despite have all these problems, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying here, and things are getting better. So too bad people just want to focus on the negative. So with that said, you got more important people to talk to than me. So I will let you get back to your day. I appreciate you giving me so much time and kind of letting everybody know what's going on. If I don't talk to you before Christmas, Merry Christmas. And
thank you, you too.
Happy New Year, man. I appreciate it.
You as well. Enjoyed it. Good seeing you again. Thanks.
All right.